Welcome once again to Otaku, the show where otaku talk about otaku topics, and we are here asking the question of where are the older otaku in anime fandom? They're out there in the kitchen, and they're out there. We don't see them around. And this week we have Matt from the Life and Tims of Anime. Hello, Matt.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
And
how are you all today? Including you, Brent. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. Especially now that we have some neat folks in the chat room talking, and so the question for today is that whole question of, and I'm bringing this up because I realized a while back that when you go to an anime convention and you walk around, pretty much everyone there is a teenager or maybe in their early 20s. You really don't see folks who are in their 30s and 40s, and when you go back and look at the history of anime fandom in the West. As we all know, there have been anime fans starting back with Astro Boy and that being released over here and so forth. And then there's a big spike around the release of Robotech in the early 80s. And so we started to see the first anime conventions, the first clubs and things like that really start to expand seriously, I would say, in that time. But the question is, if we had all those folks getting into anime around the time of Robotech and the 80s and so forth, that would make them in their 40s or 50s now. Where are they? Why aren't they hosting panels, doing things like that? So it's kind of weird. Now, to be fair, I have seen there's a panel at, I think, last year's Otakon, which is, something along, older anime fans. So they had a bunch of folks who got into it way back at time. But they're very, very rare, and I'm wondering why that is.
Well, we do obviously still see older otakus in in other forms of medium, like most older otakus are doing podcasts now. We've got Anime World Order. Those are, they're not exactly older otakus, but they are pretty reasonably they can be categorized as that. It's I'm guessing they just see it as a young kids game. It's like, let the kids go to the conventions, let the kids be the ones that go into the hyperactive environment.
That's the thing, yeah.
And we'll stay home, watch the anime we like, have our own little anime get-togethers. At public, it's just between our friends.
Yeah.
Because when you get that old, well, not that old, you've been a fan for that long, you find ways of either making or finding local fans and becoming best friends with them. So you get your own little private anime club going where you watch anime together, stuff like that. They stay at home and they do podcasts. They have their own mini conventions, basically. Their own parties where they watch the stuff like that. But they do, it's let the young kids have their fun. We've had our time at the conventions. We'll sit back and watch, kind of thing.
I think that's an excellent point. I think a lot of older otaku, I think they've done that. They've kind of, not exactly, I guess they are kind of tired of it. It's one of those things where conventions are fun, but there does come to a point where it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort. Actually, we have Mr. Artist 24, Robert Clyde Allen, in the chat room. He's great. He goes to local cons and does things like that. And he does interact with the fandom. But that is uncommon. I think it does make a lot of sense, and I think and this is something that I don't know if other folks in the chat room have had this experience. I kind of burned out with cons at one point. After going to cons for 5 or 6 years, I was kind of like, okay, I've done this. I know what it's like. I've kind of been to a lot of the panels. I understand all of the opinions being made. I don't really need to go to another panel about the psychology of Evangelion or what have you.
Well, I'm guessing, it's, that's the thing. Another reason why, a lot of younger kids or younger people go to the cons. When you first start going to cons, a lot of the reason you're going to a con is to buy stuff. Because you're young, you can't exactly order that stuff online. Because the money you have is all cash on hand. You need to buy it in person. And you can't be asking your parents all the time to order this really freaky stuff from Japan. That's why you go to cons then. Once you reach the age of about 20, maybe 18, 19, a bit further. From then on, you're going to buy stuff and panels. You're going for the panels.
Johnny, why does this girl not have any clothes on?
Pretty much, And then once you've done the panel so many times, you've kind of heard it all. You didn't like it, Brent. You don't need to hear the reason behind Gundam again. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
don't see the panel again. You know, because they just keep repeating those panels because
Yeah.
you know they're getting new fans all the time. They're
Yeah.
getting new 18 to 25-year-olds. They're getting these
Yeah.
new people.
And I think
that happens in this panel.
absolutely. I think that Schmitty in the chat room made an excellent point that where do you see older folks at the cons? It's behind the dealers' tables.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's absolutely right. I think a lot of fans then get into the dealer side of things, getting things in from Japan and selling them. And certainly, you know, when I bought anime cells and things like that, you know, you talk to the folks, they are definitely otaku.
Definitely.
It's actually kind of
Without a doubt.
it's actually kind of fun if you go to some of these cell dealers, especially because you know they will see a cell and know exactly what anime it's from. Imagine the level of fandom that requires to be able to recognize just based on that character design is obviously from Nadesco the movie.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. So you do definitely see a lot of that.
Well, that's another thing about the experience thing. Older otakus know how much kids spend
Yeah.
at a convention. They know how much money they will make if they can do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And thus they think, I can still go to the convention, but make money
Yeah.
instead of lose it, you know. And because obviously once you're older, money becomes a bigger concern. When you're younger, you get your money, you spend it like, you know, it comes out of your nose. You know, you know, you don't need to worry about money. But when you're older, you know, it becomes a concern. You think, I still want to go to the conventions, but I can't afford to spend that much money.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll earn money instead. You know, I'll earn money, and whatever stock I don't sell may or may not find its way into my bank.
So to speak.
Kind of thing, yeah.
The other side of that too, also, you know, getting back to why a lot of fans I think don't go to cons. It does come to the point where you've collected everything you want to collect. You know, you have a lot of figurines, you have a lot of posters, you know, you have a lot of stuff, and you know, there does come to that point where it's kind of like, okay, I could go, but what else am I going to buy? Yeah, I could fill up that filing cabinet full of cells more, but it's not as big of a draw as it is for an 18-year-old who's never been to one of these things where, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff that's open to me. And you also have the issue, which I think is an issue for cons in general, just to sort of go off on that for a second, that you know, with the internet, you don't need cons as much as you used to.
Yeah. Because you can order a lot of the stuff.
Yep, you can order a lot of the
online.
stuff. You know, a lot of those panels are now blog posts, basically.
Yeah,
You know?
and everything you can get at a con, you can get on the internet.
Right.
And again, when you're younger, you can't always access that stuff on the internet.
Mm.
You know, the panel stuff, you know, the blog post stuff, you probably can. But again, I'll raise a point of you can't ask your mum to order that slightly, maybe a little too inappropriate love pillow. You know, basically she's been raped by a squid. Just a bit inappropriate, you know, just a little.
Yeah.
Your mum might just cock her head a bit, you know. But yeah, you can't order that stuff for obvious reasons. You know, you'll be, and even if it is totally appropriate, you know, like just like my Haruhi plastic statue, totally appropriate, nothing wrong with it. But you don't want your mum to think you're obsessed with women in little plastic forms, you know.
Right.
It's the embarrassment factor. So you need to go to a con so you can buy it yourself. And even if your parents see it, you know, they can't do anything. They can't say, no, you've already bought it. And then once you reach that certain age, you can just do it all you want because you don't have to fear judgment.
Exactly. That's very true. And I find it very interesting that the cover to, I think it's Fred Patton's book, which is about his history of that, is him sitting at home watching anime. Which I think is very, you know, and he's got, you know, figurines around him and stacks of books and manga and so forth. But it's you know, that is very interesting. And actually getting into some of the discussion in the chat room about meeting like voice actors and such. And yeah, Vic's an awesome guy. I've seen him in real life too, Vic Mignogna. And that's another thing too, is, you know, it's great to go and see those folks. Once you've seen them 3 times, okay, you know, we kind of see them. It's like
kind of like whoop-de-doo.
Right. Now, the other interesting thing, though, to me is the question of where, you know, why those older otaku don't go to cons. Maybe they do, just to meet up with people. One of the things I've been enjoying about cons is getting to know people through Twitter and through blogs and so forth and so on, and then saying, oh, you're going to be at this con, let's meet up. It seems to me that is the one real big opportunity to get together with folks that and you respect, and actually you see them in real life and you hang out and have lunch.
Well, that's the thing is, you don't need a con for that when you're older. It's
you just do it. Yeah.
It's like the only time I can see my friend down in London is MCM. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm that young. I'm not that. I'm 17. I'm not that young at all. But I have no other way to see him. But an older person, they find a blogger. They've gotten in contact with. They're saying, yeah, you're pretty cool. At the end, just back and forth conversations, regular conversation. They don't have to say, ooh, let's meet up at MCM. They just say, fancy meeting in London for a cup of tea.
Yeah, true.
They don't need conventions. Again, everything you can get at a convention when you're older, you can get online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. And I think that's really unfortunate.
No, definitely, yeah.
I mean, it's one of those, and it's one of the things I kind of like to address is the question: how can we bring more of those older fans into the fold, if you will? Maybe even not just at cons, but we were talking earlier about how a lot of the older otaku, and by that we're meaning folks like in their 30s, they generally podcast. Why can't we get some of these older fans, older than that, into those podcasts? Why can't we get those folks who've been into anime since the days of Astro or Gatchaman or
the days of yore?
The days of yore, yes, the ancient times. No, but
back when dinosaurs were
pretty much. But yeah, what could we do to say, hey, you guys are awesome. Let's bring you on more. And I think part of
that's not really a thing of what we can do, because what we can do is say just that. You guys are awesome. Come on our show for an episode.
Yeah.
It's more the thing of again, the podcasters are still in that transitional stage of let the young kids have their game. And, I'm an older otaku. Sort of in between. So they kind of think, this is our day. This is our podcast. We want to talk about anime of our day.
Yeah.
They don't want to bring on the older people because they don't want their podcast to turn into back in Astro, Astro Boy.
Yeah.
I mean that's not to say that that would be annoying. It's just that's what a lot of them feel.
I absolutely agree, and I think that's one of the unfortunate things is we absolutely need folks to say I was having this conversation a couple of weeks ago where someone was saying, oh, I'm so frustrated with the rise of Moe. Especially with how it was, it was inserted into Macross Frontier. I was like, I'm sorry, original Macross had Moe. Those girls were Moe. That was very much the point of some of those characters. So it's having that perspective, which I think is really important to having some of these folks around. I think it'd be really awesome actually to have a show where you have a young fan, sort of a middle fan, and an older fan, so they can compare those experiences. It's great having the energy of the earlier fans. It's also great having that perspective of saying, here's what's like, or here's how it has really, really changed.
Yeah.
So
basically you're saying you want me, you, and some older bloke to do a show.
Pretty much.
I'm down with that. But yeah, that's the older otaku are the most educated, but also the people that have the least opportunity to educate.
Right.
The middle fans, such as yourself and Anime World Order, are the only people with the opportunity to educate, and yes, they educate damn well. They're teaching what should be taught, but they're not exactly teaching it all. There's that little bit of perspective they don't have. That they're not giving the younger otaku. I keep saying otaku. There's that little bit of extra, that little piece of the puzzle that the middle fans still don't get, and will never get. They'll get they'll get a similar piece of the puzzle when in 10 years when they become older otaku, the channel Cthulhu. But for now, they don't have it, and that's again, it's a real shame that they're not bringing on the older otaku.
And
I'm just going to not say it. I'm just going to say it.
Them.
The older ones.
Yes.
Bringing them on to talk.
Yeah.
To get that piece of the puzzle, and then because they don't realise how worthwhile it is talking to someone so much more experienced than you.
Right.
Even 5 years of anime fandom can totally change your perspective.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And some folks in the chat room are talking about, anime fans can watch those older shows with a click of a button. Yeah, they can. They don't. Frankly, I mean, we've had streams of a lot of those older anime for quite a long time, and you come across anime fans, and they do not know what Harlock is. They do not know what all those older shows are. Or they may have stumbled across it, but they've never watched it. And that's the thing, is that understand that these are folks who have watched Haruhi and K-On! And Macross and Gundam and Astro Boy, and they have this huge range of experience, and that's something that one of the issues I have, not issues, but one of the unfortunate aspects of having only these sort of mid-otaku doing these podcasts is they're running to catch up. They're reviewing Tezuka works, for example, and it's like, well, I've only read 3 or 4 Tezuka stuff because there's only so many hours in the day. And it would be great having those folks who, like, I've been reading or watching all this stuff as it comes out, so you don't have that issue. So there's a lot of experience that you get from that is really important, of being able to get that huge range.
And the only way to get that experience is, like you said, is to go back and read that stuff. And the only people willing to do that are the mid-otaku, so they can get that piece of the puzzle. But by the time they've got enough, they've read enough of it, they've watched enough of it, they're older otaku. It doesn't matter. They've gotten the experience, but they're not the young kid anymore. They're not the podcaster anymore. They're just the dude that sits at home and has all these DVDs and watches them when he wants.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a big problem. It gets back to that whole question of where can we find those. And I guess part of the issue is that I would love to bring folks on, and Mr. Artist is a good example. We've got to figure out some way of doing that. We'll have to arrange some call-in number or something. But the thing is, I mean, it is hard to find them. It is really hard to track down those folks to invite them on. Mr. Artist 24 is the only one. Robert Clyde Allen is the only one that I know who makes himself available on YouTube and things like that. There's the Grizzled Old Otaku, whoever that guy is on YouTube, who is awesome. But there are very, very, very few of those.
And the thing about tracking them down is, just to put it into perspective, a younger otaku needs other otaku friends. An older otaku doesn't. He's got or she, they've already got them. So they're not going online to find new friends. They're not going online to find followers. They've got their comfort zone. They've got what they need. Yes, they know that having a couple more friends would be nice. They don't need them. They don't want them. They're happy where they are, so they don't need to bother.
That's an excellent point. Something that younger fans typically say about anime cons. In fact, you said about this about cons, Matt, is
I've got to meet friends. I've got to meet people.
It's like, oh my gosh, there are other people who actually are as obsessed as I am. And I think once you hit your 40s, that doesn't really concern you anymore, because you've been in there for several decades. And you're like, okay, that's not an issue anymore.
Yeah, because it's just another thing that everything at a con, an older person can get at home. They've got their friends. They've got the panels online. They can order the stuff without fear of judgment. They just don't need anything. It's all, why go, like, for example, an older otaku in my position, living all the way in north of England, the centre of England, why go down to London? Why make that 3-hour trip when I've got it all here? Why move? Why get out of my chair? Why bother?
And the other thing, too, is I honestly believe that a lot of otaku become less obsessed about it as time goes on. Definitely. I'm a great example where I got really into anime for a while, and I've always had a lot of interests, but the passion cools somewhat. You can still be really into it and watch it and spend a lot of time on it, but there does come to a point where, as folks say, you get married, you get a different kind of job, you get other interests, you want to do other things, and so
that's the thing.
Like you say, you're not going to go to 3 cons a year. It's just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like you hit 40 and you think, anime is great, but there's so many TV shows I missed. I missed all of Lost. I missed all of The Walking Dead. I missed Dead Set. older otaku, because they made the decision to be obsessed with anime, to be really into it, to devote most of their time to it, they've missed out on the other side of, what's outside otakudom, of watching Dead Set, Walking Dead, Lost, whatever. The new series of Hawaii Five-0. They've missed all that because they were watching anime, and now they've hit 40. It's like, that's really cool, and I've still got my DVDs. I can watch it when I want.
Yeah.
But I want to go buy all this older stuff that I've missed. I want to see all these movies I've missed out on. I want to catch up with my old friends that weren't otaku, and be a normal person. Be into normal people stuff a bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with either side. That's just the decision they made, and now they want to rectify it.
You also do get the point where you've kind of gone back and you've explored the stuff that came before. You've watched the stuff that you have, and you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to keep up. I'm going to keep watching stuff, but I don't need to backfill. So I have time for other stuff too. So you can kind of spread out that way. And that's the thing, is that there's a lot of, and as folks are saying in the chat room, one of the issues, and it's one of the reasons why I'd like to get more older otaku into the fold, is that younger fans just they don't like the way older stuff looks, or they just don't understand the appeal. And I can understand that. Go back, try going back and watching original Astro Boy. That's tough. Even for someone who loves original Astro Boy and those sort of stuff, that is really rough animation. Bad voice acting. I'll just say it. Okay, they're doing their best.
And that same problem is in other, not otaku stuff, but nerdy stuff. Comics, for example, the Batman stuff. Like the thing that made me a nerd was Batman Nightfall, and it is the best Batman story there ever was. This massive 3-part thing, but the art style is awful. It's horrible. It is so bad. Everyone looks like He-Man. It's really, really bad. And that's why a lot of new Batman fans just don't get it. Don't get what makes Batman Batman. I mean, again, I don't, because I've only read Nightfall and a couple other older stuff. Well, I say a couple. I've read a whole giant shelf full. But, it's the same thing with anime. They don't know what makes Gundam Gundam because they haven't watched all of the older stuff. They watch the newer stuff. They're watching Gundam 00 or reading Gundam 00F. I might have confused those. They haven't watched the original Gundam, because they say, oh, it's got bad art style, and I don't need to watch it, but you do.
Right.
You do. You need to know. You need to know what makes Gundam really Gundam. You need to know the reference. You need to know where it all comes from.
Exactly.
So that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. As folks have been saying in the chat room, it's really fun once you get into it, realizing all the little references folks will toss in modern anime to older anime. We were watching Densha Otoko, which granted is a J-drama, but there are all sorts of little references, and there will be more, by the way. Gundam fans, when as you watch more of Densha Otoko, there's some huge Gundam things in there. But that's the thing, is that, understanding that backstory and having those older fans in who can give you that perspective of saying, well, the reason they did that, I argue with folks about this a lot, and actually a good example of that, which ties in quite nicely, is when folks watch Gundam Seed Destiny and the introduction of the character Shin, who is this really angry kid with red eyes and who's really upset and has all these issues, a lot of modern fans thought that was that he was going to be the hero of the show. Once if you've seen enough mecha and enough shonen series, you realize that's not going to be your hero.
Yeah.
And it's having that kind of perspective on things, understand, okay, that might be the protagonist, but don't pin all your hopes on him being the central character that we're all going to sympathize with and all the good things are going to happen to. More has got to happen with this character before he becomes heroic. That's the kind of thing.
You brought up another big point there as well of if you've watched enough mecha, he's not going to be the hero. He's also, if you've watched enough mecha, you can predict the next mecha.
Yeah.
Older otaku have watched enough anime, they can predict the next anime. They don't need that kind of stuff. They don't. Again, they don't need to go to cons to hear the announcement because they already know what's coming.
Yeah.
You know, they think, oh, it's summer and the temperature is 53 outside, so it's going to be a harem. You know, they just know. You know, they don't. Again, they just don't need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You know, and there's a lot to be said for having that experience. It's something that the younger fans don't have by definition. You know, that's fine. And it's why I think, you know, we need these folks in there to provide that perspective. And it's the problem is there is so damn much anime out there. Pardon my French. It's huge. There's just so much to go back to, and it's really, really tough to go back and backfill all this stuff. There's just only so many hours in the day, especially if you want to catch up on things and keep up with things.
Yeah.
So
and that's why having an older otaku teach you this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it means you don't have to. You know, you still have to watch a bit of it. You know, you still have to watch the original Macross.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to watch the 4 series that came in between what you're watching now. You know, you don't need to watch all that stuff because you're
Macross 7.
The main point.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting the main bits of it from the older otaku, and you're getting a bit of the experience of actually watching it.
And that's the great thing, is that otaku can say, okay, watch Macross, the original Macross 7 TV series, the original movie, that's pretty much all you need.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't have to go back and cherry pick and say, well,
for what you need to watch.
Exactly, which is incredibly, incredibly useful. Plus the stuff that, you know, those older otaku will know things like Eyes of Mars, for example, as Robert and I have talked about. There are these weird older... this is an anime made by like a New Age cult. So it's like this weird science fiction thing on Mars with like these big New Age astral projection storylines. It's very strange. And it's one of those things that I love aiming people to say, if you can find it, because it was only released on VHS, if you can find it, it's this really funky, really fun ride. But you're probably not going to, you know, you're not going to stumble across that, generally speaking, unless you're speaking to somebody who's been a fan for a while. So there's all that wonderful little obscure stuff.
Yeah.
Not to mention, as folks are pointing out, you know, there's that whole broader fandom. There's the tokusatsu shows. There's the J-dramas.
Yeah.
It's great to have that in there as well. So yeah, it's tough and it's interesting. If I can find a way, I would love to. Eyes of Mars is one of those things I could digitize and put up on a torrent somewhere. If I ever figure out how to, I'd love to be, you know, the guy who makes that available. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think there's one thing we need to do as well while we're on Otaku. See, now I'm mixing it the other way around. Is read Miniman's email.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
Shall I read that, or do you
Go for it.
Right, okay. Just let me open the window in the right way.
Yeah.
The problem is that while there are a couple of older otakus out there, it is a relatively new thing, considering the boom only really came with Ghost in the Shell, and the way it is presented isn't really in a comparable element to Western storytelling. And so those who are used to that paradigm stick to that paradigm, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, is very appropriate here. The fact is, as you grow up, you can become complacent with no need for any changes. Thus, while you may become aware of anime... This is funny because he's basically saying the opposite to what we've said throughout it. Anyway, there is no need to obsessively watch it. A 40-year-old, for example, may enjoy Akira, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they will hop onto anime. They'll appreciate it as a film and not as an anime. Once someone's idea for media is set, it can be hard to change that notion. To older people, anime is just an extension to the film and animation part of media, and and not its own thing. Thus, there is no need to actively seek it.
That's interesting. So he's approaching it from a different perspective of, you know, why don't older people become otaku?
Well, we know that. You know, the older people that haven't watched anime were the people that were told it was a demon, basically.
Well, and also you get a lot of folks who just, and I think he raised an excellent point that a lot of older people aren't obsessive. You know, you find your hobbies early, generally speaking, and I think a lot of folks, you know, once you pass that 20 or 30-year-old mark, if you're not into cartoons by that point, you're not into animation, you're probably not going to suddenly, you know, get into it the same way, or at least there's a much lower percentage of adults who are going to get into it as opposed to 15-year-olds or 18-year-olds or whatever. So it's absolutely true that it is much harder to bring in adults into it because, and frankly, when we talk about hobbies and so forth, they've got their hobbies already. They're into their own stuff.
Their stuff.
Exactly. So they don't need to really add on to that, which is fine. That's just the way it is. But yeah, and I think it's one of the reasons why we have this situation, is that there are only so many older fans. But it's something I think we do need to harbor them. We do need to really spend more. It's one of those things where in some communities the older folks stick around. It's actually funny. I mean, I think we talked about this before. In Japan, the folks who were making anime in the 70s and 80s are still around.
Yeah.
It's shocking how few folks have died off, frankly. So they've got all of those creators still there, and it's kind of strange that the folks who started those cons back in the 80s, where are they now? Where are those core otaku? It would be great to have them around doing stuff. And as we said, we kind of have the answers, but we need to more consciously bring them into the fold compared to other places where they just sort of they stick around for whatever reason. So this is the way of it. All right. Well, I think we have covered the topic pretty darn well then.
There was one other thing I wanted to say, but I've actually completely forgotten.
Oh, no!
Nope. Completely gone. But yeah, it's actually, now I remember, I've taken my hat off now. I can stop talking. But I will keep talking. I will defy the hat.
All right.
There are a lot of older otaku out there. They're all there. But and it's like you've got to think of it. For every party that is advertised, in anime, every anime party that is advertised, for the younger kids advertising them, there are 1,000 more that aren't advertised and just held privately between friends.
True.
That are older otaku doing that.
Yeah.
They don't, because they don't need to advertise it. All this stuff is going on. We just can't find it.
Yeah.
And that's why we have no way of contacting older otaku because, in a way, they don't want to be contacted.
Yeah. True.
I'm pretty sure they'd all love to do a podcast. It's weird that once they get to the older otaku stage, they think, right, that's me done for podcasting, which it really shouldn't be. They should keep going. I mean, maybe they should end their current podcast and start a new one. Well,
we also have the issue that for all these older fans, podcasting didn't exist for the longest time.
Definitely, yeah.
So for a lot of them, and I've met a lot of folks who just don't, and outside of anime fandom, that don't know how to podcast. They don't know how to start. They don't know, they don't know what Skype is. And so for a lot of folks, that is an issue. And also, I mean, you have folks who don't have the computing set up to do that. It's one of the other things that I think a lot of younger folks forget is that, a large percentage of the population does not have a solid gaming rig. They have a decent computer for doing email. And that's fine. That's what they use it for. So that's the other issue is sort of getting them to that point where they understand. Look, here's all you need to be able to do this, and trying to to get it in. It's just that is a hump as well.
So that's the one thing we can hope for in a way that now all otaku know at least how to use a computer. Basically. Yeah. They know, and they have that technology know-how to learn how to do a podcast. I learned how to do a podcast, so it can't be that hard for other people to learn. So, hopefully, older otaku now will stick around a bit more. But again, we can only hope that it isn't just that typical thing of going, well, podcast is over, I'm older, I'm done, I'm going in my living room to watch anime. And just forever, just leave it at that for a long time. Yeah,
quite possibly. It's interesting. Cool. All right. Well, as always, I want to thank Matt for joining us. Thank you very much from the Life and Tims of Anime.
No problem, Brent. It's a pleasure being here. It's always a pleasure entertaining you people, and it's always a pleasure being entertained by you, Brent, because we all know you are God. He's not God, it's you.
I sure hope not. That's really, really scary.
If you were God, the world would be very, 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 very different.
That is very true.
Miniman would be made out of flan. I don't know why, but Miniman would be made out of flan.
Fair
I
enough.
love in my basement so I can go eating when I want.
That's really disturbingly phrased.
That's the weirdest thing I've ever said.
That is the weirdest thing I've ever said. Anyway, all right, so cool. So thank you all for joining us, and hope you join us again in 2 weeks when we'll be talking about other stuff. I'm hoping to get other guest hosts on as well. So we're looking to expand our little circle, and it should be a lot of fun. So hope to see you all next time. Thanks for joining us. See ya.
Sayonara, bye-bye.